welcome back to TezMania TV. Today it's time for a DIY or die project. I'm going to be making two very fun, very simple tank tops today. You don't need anything advanced to be able to do this. You don't need a sewing machine. We're going to do all the sewing by hand. And yeah, it's gonna be pretty simple. So what I did was buy a 2-pack of Razorback tank tops, a black and a white one, and I wanted to cut them in half and sew them together with the mismatching pieces so that I get one white half, one black half. The tank tops that I'm using in this video were purchased from a shop called Bon Prix, and if I have the link I will put it in the caption box below. So yeah, let's get started. I have my two tank tops laid out side by side, and we're going to start by cutting them both down the very middle, and then flip the two halves over to the other tank top to create two half white, half black tanks. In order to locate the very middle, grip the first tank top by what appears to be the top and bottom middle part and lift it up, then lay it back down again and make sure that the side seams meet. This is where the exact middle is. If your tank top doesn't have side seams, you can always measure to find the middle. Mine is now nice and lined up, so I'm going to leave it like that and locate the middle of the other tank top as well, following that same procedure. After that, I'm getting out my fabric scissors and I'm going to start cutting. I'm making sure the fabric doesn't move by holding it down as I cut. We want this to be exact, and if the fabric moves, we risk everything being crooked. Once I've cut through the entire back, I'm going to line up the middle front and cut that open as well, again holding the tank in place as I go along. The white tank has now been cut in two, and we're going to repeat the cutting on the black tank. After that, I'm removing the right half of the black tank top and switching it around with the right half of the white tank top, trying to line them up as neatly as possible and just keeping them in place with a couple of pinning needles. Now these tank tops are way too long for me. I wear mostly high-waisted skirts, shorts, or pants, and I hate it when tank tops are too long, so I'm going to shorten both of the tanks by cutting off about 15 centimeters from the bottom. I'm actually going by where the tag is on the inside and cutting right above it so that it gets cut off in the process. I'd like a nice raw hem, but if you're shortening your tank top and you want a clean sewn hemline, you can obviously just create and sew a new hem. As I cut, I'm moving the pinning needles to the new bottom, making sure that the two halves still match up. Now that the length has been corrected, it's time to sew the first two halves together, and for tank number one, I'm going to do this using a thick red yarn and a medium-sized needle. I start by tying a knot at the end of the yarn, and then I sew the halves together by hand in X's. So you first pull the needle through from the inside out, then go across diagonally and create the first half of the X, before going back across in the opposite direction and completing the X. From there, you start with the next X, and so on, all the way from the bottom to the top, or from the top to the bottom, depending on which way you prefer to go. If you're using this technique, make sure to not tug too much on the yarn or thread as you sew, because you don't want the X's to be too tight or have the fabric halves scrunch up. If you're just after two different color halves and don't want the hand-sewn stuff, you can always sew your two halves together the regular way using a sewing machine or by hand. But if you do that, remember to turn your tank top halves inside out before sewing, because you don't want the stitches for the outside when using that method. Here, we want the stitches to show, which is why I'm not inverting the tank top. Once I got to the top, I did 2 stitches straight across instead of an X shape. You can do this all the way if you want, or mix the 2 stitches. When I was done, I just tied the end of the yarn on the inside into a knot and cut the rest of it off. I then flipped it over and repeated the process of hand stitching for the front as well, and tank top number 1 is now done. Fun, easy, and instantly something more interesting than your basic tank. For the second tank, I've just trimmed the length here, and I'm gonna put this together by using, you guessed it, safety pins. For this, I realized that it would be easier to have the two middles face up, so I removed the pinning needles and laid everything out facing upwards. I then selected a larger size safety pin for the back and a medium size safety pin for the front, and began pinning the two halves together. I did the front first, placed one pin at the top and one at the bottom, and then one in the middle, and kept going for the middle after that, trying to space them equally as I went along. If you're a very meticulous person, unlike me, you can measure the length of your tank top, divide it by as many pins as you want to use, and calculate the exact distances they should be spaced from one another. Once the front was done, I flipped the tank top over and repeated the process in the back. Using safety pins like this creates more space in the tank top, so the fit will be slightly looser than it was before I cut it up. If I wanted to make the fit tighter again, I could always take in the 2 side seams. There we go, second tank top is ready. And I'll probably add some paint or patches to these two at some point, but for now, I now have two half white, half black tanks. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this simple and fun DIY project. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, do no harm, but take no shit. I'll see you next time.